Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 14th of April, and you have just a little more than 24 hours to get your taxes done and submitted. Certainly to pay them, if not to file them. If you do an extension, then you have a little bit more time, but nevertheless, you've got to have some basic idea, and don't dare pay the government too little money when you estimate it, if you do that. But either way, that's where we're at. We're in the middle of it now, folks, and just want to welcome all of you to the show. I don't know why I can't see the feed right now, so as usual, I may have to post things in Facebook directly. So let me see what I can do about that while I'm multitasking as we speak. Anyway, great to have you on the show with us, and we're going to start out today. We're going to focus on Oregon, but we're going to talk about President Trump because he's making a lot of news here in Oregon, particularly with the Democrats. The Democrats who don't solve problems and have largely failed to do anything about the things that they all said were concerned about and everybody ran on last year. The media has gone into hyper cover their butts mode, and it is time that somebody respond to this. Stay tuned for more on that. But for now, I just want you to know that we are definitely looking at a state that has decided that it's going to be the resistance. And as the resistance goes, hi, Lori, good to see you. We are, uh, we've got our leaders focusing all their energy on Trump. What's crazy is that all the problems they're talking about were bad and getting worse before President Trump ever came to office, but they are definitely going to try to blame them all on Trump because they don't take responsibility for anything. They never do. Um, and they also enjoy a media advantage here in Oregon, which they don't deserve to have, but they nevertheless have it at the moment, where they are uh, going out and essentially saying it's Oregon versus President Trump. And there are plenty of Oregonians who disagree with them entirely on that. So, our first headline here is that it looks like Tina Kotek has come out and said that she is going to hold the line against the Trump ban on DEI. She has said that she's ordered the state's education department to just continue doing the policies, which Maine has now found will lead to your state being defunded by the federal government. And of course, that was the governor of Maine is the one who made a spectacle of herself at the National Governors Association when President Trump came and spoke, and and eventually the consequences ensued. So I guess they're gonna. I think the Maine governor said, "I'll see you in court." Okay, well that's an interesting thing because this is where the Democrats are spending all their time. Anyway, what Tina Kotek said is that she will not comply with the executive order relating to DEI. She said, since the start of the new federal administration, I promised Oregonians I would not back down from a fight when it comes to safeguarding Oregon's values. So she's spoken for all of us and stated that Oregon's values are as follows: making sure every child has the opportunity to meet their future promise with a strong public education, and is one of the most fundamental responsibilities of government and one of my top priorities as governor. That doesn't say anything about DEI. What it does say is something that she hasn't done. And she hasn't done it, and the Oregon's government hasn't done it for many years. And they spend more money than nearly everyone else in doing so. The U.S. Department of Education has given states the deadline of Sunday, which is this past Sunday, to end their support for DEI policies in education or face the cessation of federal funding. The Oregon Department of Education Director, Charlene Williams, she's replied to the threat in a letter refusing to change the policies. President Trump said, you're just not going to have funding. But if you don't change your policies, you don't change your policies. Oregon has implemented and continues to implement education programs in accordance with state and federal law. Oregon remains fiercely committed to its values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we celebrate our differences in common humanity. Apparently, they do that instead of education. Our moral and ethical obligation is to stand up for public education. That's not standing up for public education, that's standing up for DEI. And clearly, the two are not the same thing, because Oregon's proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. She went on to relate some procedural problems she had with the order to justify the noncompliance. She said there is no circumstance where it is okay to leverage children's resources as a political tool. Well, it's not. It's a policy tool. Duh. Kotek said she ordered the Department of Education to, quote, hold the line, unquote, against Trump's order. That's the same thing the last report said. Some schools have filed a lawsuit against the president's DEI ban that argues that the directive was vague and is an unconstitutional reading of the law. Democrats who say that democracy is at stake, when people voted, and they voted specifically because they wanted President Trump and his policies, and that's what they're getting from President Trump. Apparently, Democrats don't believe in democracy so much, and apparently they have a newfound interest in the Constitution, which doesn't say any of the things they say it says. It's so fascinating. They've got this fantasy version of the Constitution, and so they're going to lose Title I funding, which we know is supposed to be to benefit low-income families, not DEI. And that's not the same thing. Definitely not the same thing. State's officials were given 10 days to agree with the conditions, and the agency's decision that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives violate non-discrimination requirements for receiving any federal money under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, Democrats don't believe in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 anymore. That's been true for a while. The deadline to respond apparently has been just extended to April 24th under agreement between the department and several groups that plan to sue federal education officials over the directive. I don't think it's going to change anything. But we do know that they're going to play this merry-go-round where they go and they find favorable judges. And I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Oregon gets about 10 to 14% of its annual public education budget from the federal government, or about $134 million, which makes up 20% of what the state gets from the feds, is Title I funding. And as I said, it's supposed to be for low-income students, not DEI. And so, but they're going to hold the line anyway because they've decided that those two are the same thing. Now, there are 3 House Republicans, Representatives Dwayne Yunker of Grants Pass, Darren Harbick of Rainbow, and Ed Deal of Staten have requested the U.S. Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to launch a federal investigation into Oregon's Department of Education, what they said are discriminatory education programs in the state, including the Oregon Teachers Scholars Program and the Educator Equity Act. The programs offer scholarships for teachers that are in training who are culturally and lingually diverse. They set goals and standards for boosting teacher diversity in the state. In other words, discrimination. So good for those guys. I don't know why every state rep hasn't signed on to that, but nevertheless, we've got 3 leaders who are stepping forward and stating what needs to be said, which is that it's time for us to hold the line and stand for the values, the real values of Oregonians, which is that we don't think people should be discriminated against, and we don't want to spend money on it, and we will not. Those are Oregon's real values. Now, let me just see if I can pull this up, because there's a bit of a back and forth going on right now, and I want to see if I can find the article that has the Attorney General. Oregon is among the states that are suing Trump over the abrupt halt to pandemic relief for schools. They're calling it pandemic relief. Pandemic's over, has been over for years now. So this is OPB. Reporter Carolyn Thompson is the one who put forward this charade, this cover story, this lie that this is actually pandemic relief aid. Because pandemic relief aid for a pandemic that doesn't exist anymore and is years into the past isn't pandemic relief aid anymore. We just described it. It's Title I funding that violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Duh. So anyway, there's a bunch of different states that are filing these lawsuits. It is 16 Democrats attorney general. Of course, New York's Letitia James, the one who tried to put Trump in jail with phony charges. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, also a Democrat, and then Dan Rayfield and a bunch of others. He says, Oregon won't be bullied. We're taking this fight to court to protect every student and teacher who's been caught in the crossfire of these political games. He just thinks it's a political game. It's dead serious. Stop the DEI. Stop the discrimination. Stop wasting taxpayer funds that are supposed to be to help low-income students and to help produce a better education system. And the fact that it's not doing that is every reason to cut it off, because that's actually not what it's for if it's not doing that. Anyway, Linda McMahon has said that schools have had ample time to spend the money. So this is why they're calling it pandemic relief aid, because it's still unspent funds left over from the pandemic relief. Again, what does the pandemic have to do with DEI? Even if you said this is pandemic relief aid, this is not about DEI. COVID-19 is not a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. If you want to blame somebody, maybe they should be suing the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese Communist Party and Anthony Fauci, who gave them the money to develop COVID-19 in the lab where it leaked from, yes, that according to the high confidence of the CIA and the intelligence community of the United States, maybe they should go get the money there. I don't know. Maybe they just don't. They don't have a big problem with China. They have a bigger problem with their own government, and that's consistent. By the way, the states attorney generals who are doing these lawsuits, all Democrats: Arizona, California, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Nevada, and the District of Columbia. So OPB, which hopefully is going to be one of the places that enjoys a deep cut in federal funds, so they can go and hold fundraisers to get the money directly themselves instead of sucking it out of us, so they can spew propaganda like this. I think it's time that they actually enjoyed the Doge cuts themselves. I'm done funding them, that's for sure. And writing a sizable check to the government for taxes is a great reminder of that as you file those taxes. Let me go ahead and post some of these articles. I'm going to just post them, I apologize, only on Facebook. So if you're watching on X or you're watching on YouTube, there's something that's just not functioning today in the tech, and I can't fix it, so I'm not going to try. But yeah, our Attorney General, he clearly thinks his job is to go and sue the Trump administration all the time. And I guess, if you're not solving any real problems, you go and you spend time on this. I'll give you an example in a moment of a real problem they could be spending their time on, but aren't. By the way, another article that talks about Attorney General Dan Rayfield is his chief quoted line is that he insists that the, quote, Constitution must be followed, unquote. So apparently he's now a constitutional expert in addition to being an ex-con, and an attorney general who doesn't solve problems. He said, I think when you talk to Democrats, you talk to Republicans, you talk to independents, everybody agrees the Constitution should always be followed. Well, you didn't seem to care about that. You didn't give a hoot about that for 4 years of the Biden administration, not once. There was far more important things like what you claim to be democracy, as I recall. Anyway, now you don't really care about that so much. And so this is what he's going to continue to do. He said, we walk through our communities, through our state. We all have expectations of privacy. He believes that privacy is being violated simply by going in and finding people who are fraudulent. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. He said, it's incredibly fascinating to me that when we file our tax returns, we have these expectations of privacy, and that Doge and Elon Musk have tried to be above the law to get access to the information we all believe private. So we should be protecting the privacy of people who are under the age of 11 receiving Social Security, above the age of 115, and some people who have not been born yet. Future unborn people, which, usually the Democrats going to have them aborted anyway, if they can. Those people shouldn't be receiving any federal money whatsoever. No COVID relief funds, no Small Business Administration loans, no Social Security, no Medicare, none of those things. Anyway, he doesn't want anybody to catch that. He claims nobody is doing it. He's an expert. We'll let him defend this nonsense. There is another article that I'm trying to find here. Oh, here we go. And here's why the Democrats are doing this. I think this answers a ton of questions, and it does so very quickly. According to the Rice Center on Law and Security at New York University School of Law, which there's a group in it inside called Just Security. They conducted an analysis of dozens of cases filed against the Trump administration to date. About 75% of the judges hearing legal challenges to President Donald Trump's executive orders and other policy actions were appointed by Democrats. 75%. That's called judge shopping. Is that in the Constitution? I think we're going to find pretty soon, unequivocally, that district judges trying to replace the authority of the executive branch with their authority is also not in the Constitution. But this is what the Democrats think is in the Constitution, which is anything they think they can find in the Constitution. But this is what they're doing. This is why they're playing this game. And by the way, 75% of the judges are not appointed by Democrats. In fact, I believe it's kind of dead even at this point, but it's not 75%. And so it should be 50-50. So you really have to go out of your way to get this to happen. So I think I'm posting all these articles as I go. So hopefully you got that last one about the judge shopping. I think the reason why Democrats are doing what they're doing is because they think that perhaps President Trump's popularity may not be very high in Oregon. And if you suck at governing and you're about to go ask or force people to pay more taxes, then I guess you wouldn't talk about your failures and the tax increases that you've got coming and the fees. You would talk about the President of the United States, who's been completely maligned and lied about in the Oregon media. There's simply no voice coming forward as there should be responding to this. So according to the Civics poll, and I don't know the accuracy of this poll, President Trump's favorability rating in Oregon is 35%, unfavorable 61%, unsure 4%. They compare that with the national favorable of 43%, 53% unfavorable, according to the Civics poll. Now, I've seen other polls that do not reflect the same gap, including, for instance, The Economist did one where the favorable is at 46, unfavorable at 51. The NPR PBS Marist poll, actually, we paid for that poll apparently, but for once it might have revealed something, and it's about a month old. So the favorable is 45%, unfavorable 49%. Again, I don't think they understand terribly that President Trump's not running for re-election. He's just doing the right thing for the country, and he's doing what he said he would do when he was elected. But there's other polling questions in here. I'll just post this for you, but there's a lot of people in Oregon, or according to this poll, that still think that we should be sending enormous sums of aid to to Ukraine. I think that what we should do is have an account that Democrats can donate to, where they can boost the Ukraine aid directly, and we'll see what they do. Because they like to spend other people's money, but they don't really care for spending their own money on these things, as we know. Anyway, and so you expect that as you do things and you do the right things, you're going to actually have some people screaming, and you're going to have the media, which is not on the side of President Trump and never has been, hemming and howling. But I think that this is all going to come to a head, and we're actually find this is greatly beneficial to the country. And here's one of the reasons. Apparently, Oregon's renowned network of trails is at risk, they say, due to federal funding cuts. A nonprofit organization called Trail Keepers of Oregon. The group, which maintains trails performing tasks ranging from basic cleaning to complex restoration, anticipates losing $500,000 in funding. It's a volunteer-based organization. I've got one question. What the hell is the federal government? Where in the Constitution does it say you have to fund trails in Oregon? I mean, if they are on federal land, even then, I think there should be an option to have volunteers come in and do it and local funders to do it. But why would the federal government be required to pay for all of these trails when it has nothing to do with firefighting and has nothing to do with really the fundamental core role of the federal government? Should we be engaging in getting more debt, borrowing more money from, I don't know, China in order to pay for trails in Oregon? Is that a good idea? Should we displace the proper funding? Sorry for that. Should we displace the proper funding for the Defense Department, which is a core function of the United States government? Should we just, have a few less soldiers, have fewer planes, less artillery, in order to send money to Oregon to expand trails? That sounds squarely like something for local and state government to deal with. But there we go. So these guys are howling that they should be receiving federal funds. And I just don't think that there's any reason for the federal funds to be involved with that. No reason whatsoever, actually. So let them howl, because it's time for that garbage to end. And there's been several stories lately. I talked about one last week where the so-called humanities in Washington and Oregon are taking a hit because federal funding is being cut for them by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Now, again, NEH, there's a lot of things that they probably fund across the country, but I looked at what the executive director said about the group called Oregon Humanities, which primarily gets its funding from the state, but apparently he's a spokesperson for all of this stuff. He's saying, how do you plan your future when a core part of your budget for decades suddenly disappears? Well, you plan your future by not making the federal government borrow money and send it to you to fund humanities. And I looked at what they meant by humanities, and it was literally every woke thing you can think of. Everything. I used to think the humanities were like about plays and performances and things that enrich the human condition, not DEI and wokeism. And guess what? We're not funding that crap anymore. So if they want funding, maybe they stop doing it, but maybe someone else funds it. Why don't we just have all these Democrat billionaires like George Soros? Why don't they send their money to that instead of funding the destruction of Western civilization? That would be far better use of their money. And I think they should go do that. by the way, Doge has said that illegal immigrants with criminal and terrorist records have been actually receiving public benefits under the Biden administration. The Customs and Border Patrol has identified 6,300 individuals paroled into the United States. And paroled means when you get captured at the border, you violated U.S. law, but you've claimed that you have asylum, a fear of deadly bodily harm if you return to your home country. And so you fear for that and you claim that and you get paroled, which means you essentially, it's like a probationary status pending your hearing. You can come into the country. They allowed 6,300 individuals into the United States under this situation who showed up on the FBI's terrorist screening center watch list or had criminal records that were actually they received work authorization, social security numbers, and they broke it down by program. They said 905 are collecting Medicaid, including 4 on the terrorist watch list. 41 are collecting unemployment insurance. There's 42,000 in benefits for that. 22 are receiving federal student loans. 409 have received net tax refunds in 2024 of $750,000. And several, and they're still trying to determine the final number of this, have received SNAP benefits, food stamps, for terrorists and criminals. So this is what the Democrats think this is super duper constitutional. And I think they should run on it. They should stick to it. They really should, because if that's what they believe our country is for, they should defend it. By the way, they were out in force in Eugene defending a program that essentially has run out of funding. And not so much because of the federal situation. It's really the fact that it's dependent on the city of Eugene. It's called CAHOOTS. It's a long, silly acronym, but it essentially is the same as the Portland Street Response. It's people in T-shirts and jackets that all look the same that go out and hand water and granola bars and talk to homeless. They were intended to be an alternative to having the police deal with them, but of course, we learned from the intrepid Kevin Dahlgren that when the Portland Street Response people are sent out to talk to these folks, they're required to stay 6 feet away from them. Because otherwise it's too much of a physical danger. And so when there is somebody who is creating a ruckus, maybe even breaking a law or two, they have to call on the police anyway when someone's that dangerous and violent. And they are the pinnacle of, in most cases, harm reduction, which is to make it as easy as possible for people to keep doing drugs and live on the street. And they're supposed to be experts in de-escalating situations that could warrant a use of force by the police. But like I said, if someone is acting violent, they have to call the police anyway. And that's proven time and again here in the Portland metro area. They're also supposed to facilitate getting people to the hospital. They, of course, carry Narcan around with them, and they help make it so that people can go and continuously overdose and go right back at it. So anyway, this article tries to sell it, but it's because the city of Eugene has run a very large deficit for a city, and they can't make ends meet, and they're getting pushback on trying to claim that they're going to raise taxes for the fire department, even though they're not going to, 80% of what they're doing won't go to the fire department and won't increase the funding to the fire department. So it's this shell game that they play over and over and over and over, which people I think are tired of. Speaking of shell games, I got some interesting stuff here to share with you. So the Oregon DMV has apparently found cases of people being registered to vote despite not showing proof of citizenship. Now, we heard this story last fall, but they have now identified 118 new cases in addition to the roughly 1,600 cases of people that didn't show proof of citizenship and yet got registered anyway. And so it's continuing to happen. They're continuing to find these people. And they're saying it was people whose information was entered into a previous computer system that was in place between 2010 and 2020. Well, there were a lot of people entered in the computer system between those 2 years. And so, but they're blaming a computer system. Apparently, the new computer system truly sucks at actually finding these things, because as soon as they were in that new system, they didn't find them until a week before the election registration deadline. Uh, you know, they're saying that only 30 people voted when the number should be zero. There are 19 people being investigated. 8 of the cases have been closed. No one knows what that means. And they say that it was clerical errors and, oh, gee, we're sorry and we won't do it again. But we did hear last fall that 54,600 people are in the state's voter database for whom there is no established proof of citizenship. They might be citizens, they might not be. These are people who are identified as not being, but I think we have a long, long way to go. And as usual, the Oregon Capitol Chronicle has jumped in and said that it was data entry errors at the Oregon Department of Transportation, the motor voter law, that caused this. And they're saying it started a long time ago, so it's not poor little Tobias Reed's fault, even though he was in the legislature back then when this first happened. So apparently he's totally innocent. And Tobias Reed said that everyone involved in voter registration elections must catch and fix errors and be accountable to people of Oregon. I'm sure glad that he established that that's actually one of his job requirements. It doesn't sound like it was in the past. He says it's hard not to be disappointed. Our elections are a chain that stretches between individual voters to the state and to county election officials. The chain is strong and reliable, but we continue to have a weak link that needs more attention, work, and accountability. Okay, so he says we still got to do more, apparently. Anyway, they are slowly but surely revealing very, very limited amounts of information as they go. And meanwhile, at the federal level, you might have heard just the other day that the SAVE Act, it actually was in play last year, and it failed. It passed the House, but it failed to get through the Senate. Now we control the Senate, but of course, this one probably can't make it through budget reconciliation, which means that it'll have to be passed not with 51 votes or whatever. It'll have to be passed over filibuster, which means that the Democrats could filibuster it. And you can guarantee that Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden will be at the forefront of protecting democracy by making sure that non-citizens can still register to vote. So that's how they're going to protect democracy. Anyway, and then they referred back to a bill that was in part going to require photo IDs to vote, a voter ID law, but also had a provision for ending vote by mail, and that failed. However, 3 representatives, Vicky Breeze Iverson, Emily McIntyre, Greg Smith, and Kim Wallen, announced that they'll introduce a bill to assign control of automatic voter registration system to the Oregon Secretary of State's office. Currently, the DMV collects the information and forwards it to the Secretary of State's office to finish registering voters. So they're going to introduce this bill. You can count on hearing nothing more about that bill in the media, because they absolutely don't want anyone to know that they do not have accountability in the system, and they are not going to fix it. They don't want anyone to know that they are killing this bill in the state legislature. So stay tuned. Speaking of bills, a list of 33 upcoming new taxes in 2025 and this is state and local taxes. as well as the danger that as of December 31st, 2025, the 2017 Trump tax cuts will expire at midnight. And it would be the biggest single tax increase in U.S. history if those tax cuts are not renewed, which it looks like they will be. The Senate has passed a bill that does this. The House is also likely to pass that, but there's arguments over some of the details, including the alternative minimum tax rates and the standard deduction rates and something called SALT tax rates, which is um, uh, states with high income taxes benefit more by allowing state taxes to be fully deductible instead of creating a ceiling on it. So it rewards high tax states with paying less federal tax and alleviates those states from feeling pressure to reduce their state income tax rates. There's going to be some utility rate increases. PGE customers 5.5%, Pacific Power 8.5%, and then a whole list of other things, including the wage tax hike, the gas tax, the new 1% car tax, the so called privilege tax. The tire tax is back at 3%. The car sales tax is different from the 1% car tax. The car tax is a new tax that creates a one-time system use fee when you purchase a vehicle new or used. And then there's the car sales tax, the privilege tax, which is a pure DEI tax. And then there's some DM fee increases, weight by mile tax, EV road use charge new. They want to have a new tax to have a road usage charge for EVs, and they do wear out the road, and they might even do a little bit more because they're kind of heavy. But so much for Democrats saying they really want EVs. Maybe they don't like EVs anymore because the leading company in making them is Tesla, which is for Elon Musk, and they'd rather burn those now. There's a delivery vehicle charge fee that they're going to add on for companies with more than 10 vehicles. So there's going to be a whole bunch of 9 vehicles, and they are going to add the rest of it, like for Amazon, to your bill. A bike tax, 63% increase, because bikes deserve to be, they really wear out the road, as you know, right? And they certainly are very, very good for the environment. Because of all the carbon pollution that they generate. So they should jack that up dramatically from $15 to $24.90 because they can. They're going to index fuel taxes, so they'll increase without a vote of the lawmakers. It's an automatic inflation spike built in. And they're going to hand out more money to Amtrak. There's a timber tax. They're going to steal the kicker. There's the statewide property tax that they want to still push forward. The 8% alcohol tax, the 5% drink tax, the 250% marriage fee increase. And there's also another kicker theft thing, and a 3% property tax increase that they want to enable. So they're really and these are people that have run out of options, right? Because they're losing their federal funding because they want to spend it on DEI. The rest of the country doesn't want to pay for Oregon's DEI, so it's going to be cut off. And they're also saying that for every problem they haven't solved, they need more money and more time. So they're going to raise taxes, and they're going to raise it on you. So Representative Jamie Kate has some bills that she wants to highlight, as does Representative Reschke. He's got 2 Second Amendment rights bills, House Bill 3075 and House Bill 3076. Essentially, they want to make it harder to obtain a firearm by increasing the firearm permit permissions, and so they want to enhance ballot measure 114, which might actually go into effect soon. They want to enhance it and double the waiting time to 60 days to purchase a firearm. And they are directing the Department of Justice to create a state licensure program. And so they're going to have additional and unnecessary oversight to an industry that already follows extensive federal regulations, including background checks, ATF licensing, and strict compliance laws. And now also there's a Senate Bill 243, which would establish a 72-hour waiting period on gun purchases, even if you already qualify for a permit, and raise the age to purchase a gun to 21, with exemptions for hunting rifles and shotguns. They're going to ban switch devices, and they're going to allow city and counties to bar people, including people with concealed gun licenses, who are, by the way, the safest gun owners in the world, fully vetted. So they can't carry them in public buildings and adjacent grounds. So makes it really easy for the mass shooters to know where to go. By the way, 977 people voiced opposition to the bill. 165 supported it. These two bills are among the bills also highlighted by Jamie Kate. You can take a look at some of the other ones that she highlights in here. She talks about the wildfire maps, which is, I have another story to share with you about that. And that apparently, let me see, the controversial Oregon wildfire map might be swapped for voluntary incentives, which is a step in the right direction. Senate Bill 83 would eliminate the map and allow for local governments to adopt model building codes intended to increase fire resilience. That would be a step in the right direction. And even some Democrats like Jeff Golden are starting to say that they need to maybe ratchet this back, because the party that wants to build housing has made itself the chief opponent of being able to build housing, as it would happen. Pam, I can see here you said, do any of you think Oregonians are going to wake up and stop this voting only for Democrats? Well, I mean, if they vote for Democrats, they're voting for this stuff. So we have yet to really see resolutely if people got that connection. But if they don't like it, we also have to give them the alternative and make it clear that an alternative would look something like what they want. And so I think, there's more stories here about the three major gun bills advancing. I'll post that. It's OPB, so take it with a grain of salt. And we've all said that the negative impact has to fall on them. That's why the Democrats are spending all their time blaming President Trump for all their problems and quietly passing legislation which undermines our freedoms and undermines the ability of anybody to want to stay in the state. House Bill 3789, it's kind of a hit job on the Freedom Foundation. It weaponizes the legal system in favor of politically connected public sector unions and provides no protection for workers, but it's called the Workers' Fraud Protection Act. It claims to protect public employees from fraudulent impersonation of union representatives. However, the legislation is deliberately crafted to target a single nonprofit organization, which has been very effective. We've had them on our show before. The Freedom Foundation. They don't impersonate unions or their representatives, period. It's a transparent political attempt to punish them for helping public employees exercise their constitutional rights. It's not about stopping fraud. It's about silencing opposition. Republicans are standing up to it, but they don't have the votes to stop it. And so just know that this is the type of stuff that Democrats are doing while they've got everyone distracted, claiming that President Trump is the cause of their problems. He's actually the only solution that they have on the table today. By the way, when we were talking about the problems the state's facing, there is one very important thing that the Democrats are paying no attention to, and guarantee you they will blame President Trump for. Oregon is facing an economic exodus as businesses flee tax burdens and regulatory hurdles. There's a report that warns that this is the case. And let's see, which university is this? didn't say. Oh, University of Oregon. A survey of the University of Oregon says thousands of potential jobs and billions of potential private investments have been lost to Oregon in the past 5 years, and the state is poised to lose even more in the next 5. So they won't be able to pay for this crap even more, and they'll have to raise taxes even more. They could decide they want to be business friendly, but they don't want to be business friendly. And this is the University of Oregon's Policy Research and Engagement School of Planning, Public Policy, and Management. They did a survey, and this is what they found. And they say they need that it highlights the need for more pull factors to counter the factors that are causing people to feel like they have to leave. They include retaining businesses within the state with tax incentives, the availability of infrastructure, land, which they refuse to make available anyway, a business-friendly climate, a workforce support, which they have made it impossible to have housing for, and effective programs for business relocation, etc. You can name it, every single thing, and I can give you an example of how they're doing something that's the opposite of that on a regular basis. I don't know if leftist loons will put it together. I don't think they want to put it together, Pam, but I do think that the people who don't know what to think and have been told what to think do have to eventually question it and reject it. And I don't know if that's not going to happen by itself. It's probably going to require our help. By the way, Corvallis has declared themselves a sanctuary city for transgender, intersex, and gender diverse people. And no one knows what that means. But the mayor, Charles Mowen, said his youngest child is non-binary. And so that's why he's taken this on. A community member, Danielle Chambers, is a trans woman, which means she's a guy, and told him almost a year ago she fell in love with Corvallis and its people. She said she's no stranger to fear. She lived in Oklahoma. She said she was facing threats to her life, so she came to Corvallis. So apparently this is what it means, is that, and it's also, they're going to resist the, quote, unconscionable federal mandates, unquote, such as the executive order to end gender-affirming medical treatments for children and teenagers under the age of 19. And they don't have to do that, but then they have to pay for it with their own money instead of using our money. And, I say if they're a consenting adult, they should just go do it. But I don't want to pay for it. But I guess if you go to Corvallis, you'll be forced to pay for other people's gender supportive care, as they like to call it. Whatever that means. And we're getting near to the end of the show here. Senate Bill 1098 has passed in the Oregon House of Representatives, and an 18-10 vote, which sounds like some people weren't there for the vote. But anyway, it sounds more. Oh, that's the Senate. Sorry. It is passed. It's Senate Bill 1098, and it's gone to the Oregon House of Representatives. The Senate voted 18-10. And it is a bill that bans book removal by the local school boards. So they're going to force kids to force libraries to offer small children porn, which was so bad they couldn't read it on the floor of the house without getting gavelled down or violating the House rules. By the way, this is your government work. A cyber attack has kept the Oregon DEQ closed for the last 3 days. So if you are experiencing an environmental emergency and you needed the Oregon DEQ, I think the only thing that people want the DEQ for is they're forced to go there to get an exhaust test to get their registration renewed for their cars. But thanks to a cyber attack and the brilliant IT people in our completely incompetent state government who can't really do anything right technology wise, they've been hacked and they're down. So maybe instead of doing that, just go and file and pay your taxes tomorrow and put off your trip to the DEQ to another day. Well, that was a lot of stuff covered tonight. Sorry for the late start, but I hope this is a good show for everybody. And please share the show with everyone you can. You know, there is one way that we can get and find, and there are people we can find who need to know that all this is happening, that it's happening in their name, that it's being done to them, in spite of them, by the people who are currently running the state and have for quite a long time. And that is not President Trump. That's Tina Kotek, Dan Rayfield, Julie Fahey, the Speaker of the House, Tobias Reed, the Secretary of State, all of our lovely members of Congress in the U.S. Senate representing Oregon, with the exception of Cliff Bentz. He's not been somebody who's been a party to these bad policies, but he's only one guy. And, this is what they need to know. If they know this, and they know that more taxes are coming their way, and they wonder why everything's getting so much more expensive, it's a human-caused disaster. It's caused by the Democrat Party running the state, and it won't change until they vote for someone else. So please share this show with everyone that you think could potentially be persuaded. Thanks again for joining me here tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night with another episode of The Captive Audience. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.